Hey guys, so I wanted to come on here and just do like a quick kind of review, or actually not a review, but to read some of the YISIS papers. I told everybody, and I've said it in my videos quite a bit of time, this is the first time I'm reading this. I'm reading it because a lot of people were comparing me to her and saying that I sound a lot like, Dr. Frances Crest Welsing. I didn't know who she was prior to reading the YISIS papers, but I don't think that you really need to study any of these scholars to really understand what kind of system you're in and what you're dealing with. The reality of it is that if you are in tune to what's going on around you and you're in tune with your spirit and listening to and feeling and interpreting energies around you, you can very well know what's going on. It's really not that hard. And so as I'm reading through this book, what's really interesting to me is that she wrote this book during the 70s. Like, it's basically a compilation of essays that she read on various different topics, and she wrote a lot of these in the 1970s. But what's interesting to me is that it sounds like she's writing it in 2017 because all of the same principles apply. So that right there tells you that nothing has changed, and it's interesting how she can put this book out, which is very phenomenal. You can definitely tell her third eye was on point when she was writing this. It's really interesting, though, that nothing has changed. A lot of people quote her work. She was in Hidden Colors. So by virtue of that, Tariq and other people that I notice quote Frances Crest Welsing quite a bit. Usually these are males who are quoting her. And it's really interesting to me that while they're quoting her, they're ignoring the overwhelming number of times that she speaks about Black male effeminization, fear in the Black community, the unwillingness to confront the issue of white supremacy, the issue of men trying to make it a female's responsibility to stand up and confront their system of white supremacy. It's really interesting to me how you have all of these male scholars and people who say that they're pro-Black and leaders of the Black community, but they only gravitate not towards the truth of the matter, but towards information that's going to affirm what they believe, which is that they bear no responsibility in the condition of the Black community and all the blame should be placed on Black women. But I'm not going to get into that sector of it because, again, that's like a broken record. If some people don't get it by now, especially the men in our community, they probably won't get it. What I want to go into is this chapter where she's talking about war. And a lot of people say that there's a war coming, we're in a war, the race war is going to come. The race war has been here before most of you and I have been born. I mean, this was written in the 1970s. I was born in like the mid-1980s. So the war has been here. The war has been here since you've been intermingling with these Caucasoid devils, since they went into your continent and saw what you were capable of doing and made notice of their extreme inferiority. The war has been waged from that day on. So the fact that people are still looking for a war and waiting for a war to happen while they're in the midst of it, it's really quite interesting, actually. Now, there's two primary parts that I want to talk about. One of them is war, but also one of them is this dynamic of interracial dating. And I'm only going to briefly touch on this because I've said a lot about it. This is like, for me, what I think is it's a mental illness that's being displayed. But the reality of it is when you're in a war, you need to pay attention to everything. History has a tendency of repeating itself. I already told you guys that these Caucasoids, they're extremely recessive in psychology, in genetics, in every way possible. So they're simply recycling old tactics, okay? Clearly, they have a database where they just store all of the uses and methods that they've used, and then they keep referring to them. And as long as they work, they're going to continue to refer to them. Many people think that interracial dating is a way to cleanse racism off the planet. I've already went on how that's really not possible. But there was a particular part in this book, the YISIS papers, that stood out to me. And I'm going to read this part right now. It says, in addition to the aforementioned non-productive behaviors, there are also increasing patterns of behavior that can be described as inducing semi-trance states, such as rhythmic hand clapping, singing, dancing, excessive rock music playing, listening to radio music, and shouting in religious settings. These patterns of behavior are manifested continually by Black people to pitch themselves into possible altered cortical brain states. Basically, what she's trying to say is that Black people are engaging in very destructive, distracting behaviors. They're simply choosing to ignore the real issue of white supremacy. And what they're doing is, rather than confronting it, they're anesthetizing themselves, distracting their mind, putting themselves in a sedated mind state so that they can simply pretend that we're not in a white supremacist system. And if you're not in a white supremacist system, then you don't have to address it and you don't have to confront it. And there goes, you know, you being safe. So they're interpreting these behavior that's being safe. Again, I'll reiterate, she wrote this in the 1970s. So the fact that it's 2017, how is that not eye-opening to anyone? Likewise, such brain states seem to have the effect of dampening the sense of an overwhelming external pain or danger over which Blacks conceive we have no control. These practices, of course, avoid problem confrontation and thereby prevent problem solution. Similarly, the increase in interracial marriages can be viewed as a means of escape and a means for Blacks to avoid the awareness of their continuing status as permanent outsiders. Now, the fact that she wrote that in the 70s and interracial dating and marriage has only increased since then, that's very telling. Because again, I've always said that Black people getting into interracial dating situations is not to absolve racism, it's to satiate their low self-esteem and make them feel accepted. That's why you have a lot of Black men ingratiating themselves in the white culture rather than transforming the minds of the white women they're with and getting them to not be racist. They take on the mentality of the white women that they're dating. The same goes for Black women, although typically a Black woman is able to maintain her Blackness despite being with a white man. And that's just the reality of it. I would really extrapolate on that. I'm not going to, though. Outside of the white chalk circle of white supremacy's numerical and genetic global necessity, it should be noted that in the white supremacy societal unit of Nazi Germany, the highest incidence of interracial marriage between Semites, non-whites, and Germans, whites, occurred just prior to the ultimate destruction of the Semites in the Holocaust. Now, I said that history repeats itself. The one leg up that Caucasoids have over Black people is that they study psychology because they're very deceptive. Again, they don't really have much to go on, so they rely on their deceptive nature and their willingness to learn psychology and use manipulation as a tactic. So all of this interracial dating, it's meaningless. It really is meaningless because it's not really doing anything. So let me read that part again so you guys can get it. Similarly, the increase in interracial marriage can be viewed as a means of escape and a means for Blacks to avoid the awareness of their continuing status as permanent outsiders. Outside of the white chalk circle of white supremacy's numerical and genetic global necessity. It should be noted that in the white supremacy societal unit of Nazi Germany, the highest incidence of interracial marriage between Semites, non-whites, and Germans, whites, occurred just prior to the ultimate destruction of the Semites in the Holocaust. Meaning it doesn't matter how much you lay up with these white supremacists, they're still going to exterminate you. You're just making it easier for them. Just like they did with the Semites, meaning the Jews, who were actually considered non-white that time, even though a lot of them were European. Bottom line is, you laying up with them is not gonna do anything. Again, history repeats itself. So just like you're going into this perpetual cycle, do you really think that they don't know that during Nazi Germany, their Semites and the Jews thought that they were going to lay up with them and that would prevent them, but they still went into those ovens and still died, regardless to how many white people they had sex with. So again, it said, it should be noted that in the white supremacy societal unit of Nazi Germany, the highest incidence of interracial marriage between Semites, non-whites, and Germans, whites, occurred just prior to the ultimate destruction of the Semites in the Holocaust. The Semites of the Jewish religion were looked upon as non-whites because their ancestors were black and resided in Africa prior to entering Europe, okay? Similarly, some blacks have sought to escape the confrontation with white supremacy through Marxist doctrine by attempting to conceive of themselves as members of the working class. What you can also add to this is them trying to align themselves with groups like feminism or LGBTQ, groups that have absolutely nothing to do with anything, that's not going to protect them, but they just want to associate themselves with these groups as a means of trying to separate themselves from blackness and shield themselves from white supremacy. That's basically what it's saying. They failed to see that Marx, who was a Semite, a non-white, was a victim of anti-Semitism. 1/3 of the world's population of Semites of the Jewish religion were destroyed by German white supremacy, meaning the millions of Marx's own descendants were destroyed in the process. Okay? So this is black people just not thinking, not really doing anything. They're simply moving out of fear and doing things that do not work. Black people have a tendency of not researching history, so that's why they don't know these things. They're blindly going by emotion, thinking that if they just lay up with white people, the closer they get to them, they're equating proximity to a lack of destruction, and that doesn't do anything. You're actually helping your assailant to get you. Like, that means if I'm stalking somebody, if somebody's stalking me and a murderer wants to kill me, I go to his house thinking that if I just go to his house and lay in the bed with him, then somehow he won't kill me. That's the same thing that black people are doing. You're thinking if you lay up with white supremacists and have sex with them, then somehow you laying up with them will make them not murder you. And that's not the case. She's saying, look at what they did in Nazi Germany. There's a reason I believe why Tariq keeps referencing look at Nazi Germany, because you're heading in the same direction. That's what black people don't get. Now, the reason why I'm going to read this second part is because people keep mentioning there's a war coming. There's a war brewing. The race war is coming. Again, black people not realizing when you're in a war. War isn't always going to look like the traditional picture of a war where you two come and declare different sides and draw a line in the sand. That's not really what it is. You're in the war already. So, and this is chapter 15. It says, black people are afraid, but black people are going to have to get over this fear. Black people do not know what is happening, but black people are going to have to learn and understand what is happening. Now, she wrote this in the 1980s, okay? Again, it's 2017. This still rings true today. Black people are not thinking, but black people are going to have to begin thinking. Black people are not being quiet, but black people are going to have to start getting quiet so they can think. Black people are not analyzing and planning, but black people are going to have to begin analyzing and planning. Black people are still not doing any of these things, by and large. They're still not doing any of these things, by and large. That's why we're still in the same situations that we were in during the 70s, 80s, 90s, early 2000s, and now in 2017. Black people do not understand deep self-respect, but black people are going to have to learn the meaning and practice of deep self-respect. Black people are going to have to stop permitting black children to play with parenthood. Black people are going to have to stop moaning, rocking, crying, complaining, and begging. Black people are going to have to stop thinking that rhyme and rhetoric will solve problems. Black people are going to have to stop finger popping and singing. Black people are going to have to stop dancing and clowning. Black people are going to have to stop laughing and listening to loud radios. All of these behaviors and many more have absolutely nothing to do with addressing the challenges and conditions of the open warfare continuously being waged against the black collective. Really, she could have added to that, black people are going to stop complaining about hair and makeup. Black people are going to have to stop trolling each other on YouTube. Black people are going to have to stop pretending to be white supremacists so they can attack black women. Black men are going to have to stop villainizing black women and praising the mothers and daughters of their oppressors. These are just things that's going to have to happen. Black women are going to have to stop laying up with white men and suggesting that black women abort black babies. I don't know how they're not tying that to their own genocide, but whatever. But refer back to the part where she said black people are going to have to start thinking. By and large, Black people are not thinking about anything. You're just literally going through life, making behaviors and decisions, and you're not thinking about anything. You seem to think that you're an individual in a world that says you're part of the collective Black whole. So there's no thought process occurring for Black people, except as it applies to material possessions and stupidity and sex and partying. Meanwhile, your enemy is literally thinking about how to destroy you every single day. As I sit and make this video, Caucasoid, they're thinking about how to destroy you. We Black people do not see the war being waged against us because we do not want to and because we are afraid. That's why you have all these Black people talking about all lives matter, and if we just did this and if we just did that, if that Black person would have did this, but officers are trained to do that. So we're really doing whatever we can to not acknowledge this war that we're currently in. We're just doing whatever we can to do that. We are engaging in behavior designed specifically to block out any awareness of the war, our true reality. Our behavior thus forces us into the insanity of hoping and begging, as opposed to the sanity of analysis, specific behavioral pattern design, and specific conduct in all areas of people activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor law, politics, religion, sex, and war. So basically what she's saying in a nutshell is what I've been saying. Rather than treat cancer, Black people, or cure cancer, Black people are trying to alleviate the pain associated with cancer so they can live comfortably with it. When they could just realize and analyze that cancer is meant to kill you, that you can't live with cancer, and that in order to live, either the cancer has to go. That's what it's going to boil down to. Cancer has to go, or you have to go. There's no way to keep cancer around and still survive. Black people need to translate that into, there's no way to live comfortably in white supremacy. If white supremacy is around, you're not going to live. Either white supremacy has to go or you have to go. It's that simple. That's really what it is. There's no other way to explain it. Nothing is going to happen beyond that. That's just it. And this is something that Black people do not want to realize, and that's why we're still in this situation. A major strategy in the war against the Black collective is the killing of Black males. Black males are being killed daily in ever-increasing numbers across the country. Keep in mind, she wrote this in the 1980s. It's 2017. Still the same thing. Black people still have yet to learn. Other, as non-white males, also are being killed in ever-increasing numbers. These Black and other non-white males are being killed by white males in uniforms who have been authorized to carry guns. This particular form of murder and slaughter is called justifiable homicide, or AKA the Casual Killing Act at play, that says that if a slave is killed, because they still see you as slaves, if a slave is killed during the process of not obeying either the slave master, the mistress, or the overseer, that overseer will not be charged with a felony. This law was put in place because so many Caucasoid females were killing Black babies. Congratulations to you, Black men, for laying up with the second arm of white supremacy. Our Black collective today has no greater understanding of this war and the phenomenon of justifiable homicide than it did when Black males were being lynched and castrated daily. So, from the time of Jim Crow up until now, Black men still don't understand. Black people, by and large, still don't. How is it that we still don't have it? How is it that we still don't have it? Our Black collective today has no greater understanding of this and the phenomenon of justifiable homicide than it did when Black males were being lynched and castrated daily 100 years ago in the period of Reconstruction or reestablishment of white supremacy following the Civil War. Nor does the Black collective have a greater understanding of the current open hunting season on Black males than it did 2 or 3 decades ago. And they still don't in 2017. That's why you still have Black men refusing to stand up to this inferior Caucasoid being. I don't understand why, but this is just a reality that we live in. And until this changes, there isn't going to be any true change. Because we really need to understand what is going on. In our impotence and ignorance, in our powerlessness and frustration, we start getting mad, fussing, crying, rhyming, begging with picket signs, rioting and misdirection, hooping and hollering, moaning in our churches, and preparing again to vote for any white man who smiled at us even though he lies to us. Again, Still doing the same thing. That's what I'm saying. She could have just, instead of the 1970s, she could have just wrote this in 2017. In fact, Frances Crest Welsing isn't dead. She just wrote this book and published it today. Because the reality is, this is still the reality. And it's still the reality because we refuse to learn and listen and do anything different, all the while they're out here killing us. We still want to talk about cars, Louboutins, makeup, apartments, mixed babies, laying up with white people, hair, makeup, interracial dating, keeping up with the Joneses, Real Housewives of Atlanta, stupid stuff that doesn't matter. And we're not focusing on this war that we're currently in because we don't want to see a war. We want to pretend like we have some of these solutions when we really don't. So we're engaging in behaviors that does absolutely nothing. It's doing absolutely nothing. As I read this book, I'm really seeing how the lack of progression in the Black community. I really am. And I would encourage everyone to get out and read it because unfortunately I can't sit here and read this whole book to you. Again, and how many Black people do you see talking about, oh, we just need to vote. Vote or die. You just need to vote. How about vote and die? Because if you're voting for a white man or a Black man that was raised by a white woman, which is a white woman, you're still going to have the same results. Anyways, these behaviors are all absolutely useless. Such behaviors are in vain and will take us nowhere. They haven't taken us anywhere yet, and we still keep doing it. And this is one thing that Black people don't get. They will all come to naught, and the problem, the war, will simply continue and intensify. And it has. And that's why they're still killing you. Doesn't matter how much you protest and pray and march and say Black Lives Matter and lay up with Caucasoids and talk about good hair and Black babies and twirling and mixed babies are beautiful and getting the best of both worlds when there is no best of white people. You're just diluting your genes. None of that is going to do anything. And it hasn't done anything. The stage has been reached in our experience of captivity out of Africa, wherein we are being challenged to demonstrate a deep self-respect, requiring us to use our whole brain computers, not just the right side, which permits us to engage in rhetoric, rhythm, and rhyme. Now we must begin to exercise and use the left side of our brain computers, the left cerebral hemisphere, which permits us to analyze critically and decode what is happening daily in front of our eyes and to organize a self and group respecting behavioral response to that which the environment is presenting us. We must have a disciplined self and group respect response to the specific war being waged against us. Without critical thinking, however, there is no self-respect. Without self-respect, there is no courage, no self-defense, no justice, no peace, and no progress. And that's why we are where we are. Because bottom line is, I've been saying it all time and time again. Low self-esteem is the problem. Black people going through life living, not really thinking about anything. We're just simply existing, trying to be comfortable, trying to live comfortably with cancer, not thinking and analyzing cancer, which white supremacy is the cancer, and understanding that there is no living with cancer. Either you live without cancer or you die with cancer. That's the only thing. And that's really what it is with white supremacy. Either you destroy white supremacy and live, or white supremacy destroys you and continues to thrive. And that's where we're heading towards. We're heading towards white supremacy killing us and thriving because Black people just don't want to get it. In his struggle against white supremacy, the great leader, I'll skip that. With this in mind, all Black people everywhere must begin to understand the exact and specific nature of the war that is being waged against the Black collective. That being said, why are Black people still talking about a war is coming? Why don't we understand that the war is already here? The fact that we're still looking for a war while we're in the midst of one is very telling. All Black people must begin to understand in depth why we are witnessing Black males being shot dead almost daily by white males in uniforms, and why it will soon escalate to more than one per day. Without the specific understanding of why we are seeing this behavior, we are unable to organize behaviors to meet this war strategy effectively. Again, she could have wrote this today. Furthermore, Black people everywhere must begin to understand why the Black collective and Black males in particular have been under intensive attack for the past 2,000 years. Indeed, Jesus was a black male who was lynched by uniformed white male Roman soldiers 2,000 years ago as a result of the same war that has continued into present day extension of the same Roman white empire. Except that there's evidence that says that Jesus didn't even exist, and even if he did, he wasn't lynched. There's conclusive evidence that says that. So if you choose to believe that as a Christian and that speaks to you, that's fine. Let it speak to you in a manner that's going to be conducive to you fighting white supremacy. Whenever there is a sense of increased vulnerability within the local and or global white collective, as for example caused by inflation, currency devaluation, unemployment, loss of war, or counter struggle by non-white people, e.g. Arabs controlling and limiting oil supplies, Iranians taking white hostages, black guerrillas struggling in southern Africa, and the loss of the Vietnam War, there will be an increase of the ever-present normal daily slaughter and murder of black and other non-white males by those both legally and illegally authorized to do so. Do we really need to say George Zimmerman? Do we really need to say those countless other white people who murdered and got away with murdering black men specifically? But people still think we've progressed, so it is what it is. This murder and slaughter will be logically viewed as justifiable within the specific logic framework of the fear of genetic white annihilation. Because black males of all non-white males have the greatest potential to genetically annihilate the white collective, black males will experience the greatest ferocity of white supremacy attack through justifiable homicide. Because black and other non-white males have the potential to produce white genetic annihilation through the use of their genitalia, and because genetic annihilation is the most fundamental fear of the global white collective, this collective, consciously or unconsciously, evolved a counter weapon or system of weapons that theoretically achieve the non-white genetic annihilation. Now, I'm going to end there because, again, I could literally sit here and read this entire book to you, and it would be filled with great information that you really should be digesting. But instead, I'm going to put the book up, and I'm going to advise that you get it yourself if you haven't read it. It is this clearly was a brilliant woman, and that's just the reality of it. It is, now that I know, it is a huge compliment that anyone would compare me to her. I think it's probably a compliment that hopefully one day I could live up to. But the reality is this is a very good book. And clearly the ancestors were speaking to her in this book. The whole spirit of the book. Obviously, she was very in tune, third eye wide open. I haven't even finished the book, and my perspective of everything is a little bit different, although I don't believe that Caucasoid's mentality is only just about genetic annihilation. Some of her I am going to reference some of this in the book that I'm writing. Obviously, I'm not going to plagiarize her work because some of my stuff I believe completely different than what she believes. But I am going to use, I am going to reference it because some of her points are actually dead on. Again, I'm not saying she's incorrect about the genetic annihilation, but I feel like that's only one piece of it. I feel like it's much deeper than that. Excellent book, though. Very well written. I wish that I could have actually met her when she was alive. Thank you to everybody who has compared me to her, because now after reading some of her material, it is definitely a huge compliment. Again, I'm going to leave that there, but I want you guys to listen to that and let that marinate and sink in. Because again, this was written in the 70s going into the 80s. We were in 2017, just like she predicted it increased. The attacks are increasing, but we're still doing the same thing. Our response is still the same. So I'll use the metaphor again. You cannot live comfortably with cancer. White supremacy is a cancer to society. In reality, if you have cancer, either the cancer has to go or you die with the cancer. The only way to keep the cancer is to die. You cannot live comfortably with cancer. That's why when they diagnose you, they tell you, if you don't get rid of this, you have this amount of time to live. It's either the cancer is going to kill you or you're going to get rid of, you're going to kill the cancer. right then you're put in a struggle of survival. So same thing with white supremacy. Either you're going to kill white supremacy or white supremacy is going to kill you. And right now, white supremacy is winning that war. Let me know what you guys think. Thank you for watching and supporting. I'll see you in the next video.